Welcome everyone to NCEA's Supporting Degree-Seeking Special Needs Students in the Catholic High School webinar. My name is Kate Reich and I am the organizer for this evening's event. Please know that all of your microphone connections with today's webinar have been muted. During the presentation, you may ask questions or provide comments for the presenter by using the chat and/or question functions located in the GoToWebinar panel. To use these functions, click on the chat or question bubble and then click into the blank box area and enter your question using your keyboard. Then click Send. The webinar presentation will run for 45 minutes, leaving some time at the end for the presenter to answer any questions that you have provided. You will be asked to complete a brief evaluation about this webinar later today, and your feedback is greatly appreciated. Lastly, this webinar is being recorded, and you will all receive a copy of the final recorded presentation, which we will email to you once that recorded file is available. Now I'm very pleased to introduce Doreen Engel, Guidance Counselor and Director of the Benilde Program at St. Raphael's Academy, as today's webinar presenter. Please welcome Doreen.
Hello everyone. I would like to thank you so much for taking time to participate in this webinar. I'm sure I'm primarily addressing teachers and principals who've already spent a long workday, and I do appreciate so much your interest in this topic. You'll notice that the title of the presentation emphasizes degree-seeking special needs students. We know that we have non-degree seeking special needs students in many Catholic high schools across the country, and I know that NCEA is considering a webinar on that topic. So if that would interest you, please let them know that you would like to hear about that topic as well. Tonight I'm going to be presenting about the Benilde program, which is an opportunity to support students with special needs in Catholic high school. It varies significantly from most methods for supporting students in that there is a very small and sometimes non-existent tutoring component. It's not based on a tutoring model or a reteaching model. I hope that you'll see some of the research basis for this, some of the fresh ideas, and hopefully come away with some takeaways. In the last presentation, there were questions about the cost. I will not be prepared to go into that this evening, but I can tell you that there is very little cost to starting this program, and I will be speaking at NCEA in April, and we'll work out the figures for you then. So we're going to touch on 5 points tonight. Here they are. Why should you consider a Benilde program for your high school? Share some information from 16 years of success from the original program. Emphasize the universal design for learning principles that were used to create the original program. Share with you the 7 core components, and then tell you how you can get more information. There is an old but beautiful photo of me. I was the original director of the Benilde program, which started at St. John's College High School in Washington, D.C. When I left that position, I had the opportunity to become the director for special education for the entire Archdiocese of Washington, D.C. And my colleague Eileen O'Toole became the director of the Benilde program, and she added many wonderful facets to the program and is still there and would be happy to take questions if anyone would like to contact her. Currently, I am starting a new Benilde program at St. Raphael's Academy here in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, which is affectionately called St. Ray's. And I want to emphasize that St. Ray's has the largest number of low-income high school students of any of the local Catholic high school. It is a school on a budget. It's a wonderful school, doing amazing things, but certainly not a school that has a lot of money to start a new program. And I want to give encouragement to those of you out there that would be concerned about that. I went backwards instead of forwards, forgive me. Okay, here are the features that a Benil program can offer, the benefits it can offer you. Improving retention and recruitment. Most high schools find that their biggest loss of enrollment is at the freshman level. Offering a Benil program could offer you an opportunity for retaining those students. You also may find that brothers and sisters of students that you currently have now may be able to attend. It improves the learning outcomes for the high-risk students, and I hope that when I have completed the webinar, you will agree with me that there is ample evidence of that. I also love the idea of continuing the tradition of Catholic education, offering an exceptional educational opportunity to all students. I love being welcoming, inclusive, and having all families feel that their children are welcome in our schools. And finally, perhaps the most important point is justice. There are students that desperately need an education that are asking to participate in our schools, and with a strong research-based model, it is possible to welcome them in and have them have an excellent experience. I also feel strongly that simply copying the format of our public school counterparts makes no sense, frankly. We have a different administrative structure than our counterparts. We're often a different size. We have a somewhat different mission. We relate to our students and our families in a different way. And so we wouldn't expect that simply just copying what they do would be appropriate. And in fact, we know that many students with learning issues in the public school are not succeeding. They're not achieving the learning outcomes that they want to achieve. So why would we want to follow the same model? I would submit that we don't. We should make up our own models that fit our schools. So the Benil program first began in 1998 at St. John's College High School in Washington, D.C., and it is still going strong. It was named after St. Benilde, a Lasallian Christian brother who was known for his interest in bright students who did not seem to be succeeding with the model that was available at the time. And as I've emphasized, it offers degree-seeking high school students with a wide variety of exceptionalities the opportunity for success. This is not a program for students of any particular need. The only common core is that they have a need and that they are degree-seeking students. In 2000 and again in 2004, NCEA and the Lynch School of Education at Boston College recognized the Benil program. This was a fabulous opportunity for me as an educator. I was able to participate in special training up at Boston College and also meet many wonderful educators throughout the country, many of whom adopted this model. Some of them did not call the program the Benil program. The name was different, but the concepts were the same. We've kept in touch over the years, and so I call these other schools the cousins, Benil's cousins. And I've learned so much from these educators, and I just really want to acknowledge them this evening. And I mentioned that I am now starting a new Benil program, so this is the perfect time, really, for me to share, gee, how do you do this? How do you work with the faculty? What do you have to explain for the parents? How do you find the kids? What does it cost? All the practical questions, because that's exactly what I'm personally doing right now. I hope I can convince you that it works extremely well. St. John's has found the following. The Benil program attracts talented teenagers that are really eager to take responsibility for their learning. Truly wonderful kids that just want a chance to go to high school. They want a chance to show people what they got, and they're really willing to step up. St. John's has also found that the parents of graduates are very grateful. The original Benilde students now are in their early 30s, and they have primarily remained involved with the school and are interested in continuing to support the school. And many of their parents have stayed involved and committed. Also, we really found that the teachers felt supported and empowered to teach all the students in their classroom. I would submit that regardless of how exclusive your school is, regardless of the rigor of the curriculum, regardless of the admission standards that you set, you still will have students that will fit the criteria of needing support, students who will end up being at risk. So all teachers end up having to teach some students like this. So who are these students? First of all, I want to be sure that we know that these are intelligent students. They are capable of learning the curriculum in a college preparatory school. How do we know that? Because they've all had a psychoeducational evaluation, either through their local public school or privately. And they have at least average intelligence. Many have above average intelligence. A few are highly gifted. And yet they're at risk for a variety of reasons. I will discuss those in a moment. These are students who are willing to embrace a new way of going to school, and they are able to meet the behavioral expectations of the school that they're attending. This is critical. The learning specialist needs to work closely with the admissions department at the school and have the background and expertise to be able to predict whether a child can meet the behavioral expectations. We know that some children, when they are not performing well in school, tend to misbehave in order to distract, in order to try to cheer themselves up that school doesn't really matter, in order to try to look popular in the eyes of their peers. We can't allow any of that to happen. So these are the characteristics of why we would think that these particular students would be at higher risk for full school failure. They have a specific learning disability. Those who are participating in the webinar who know me know that I prefer the term learning difference. I feel that disability really singles the student out and says there's something wrong with you that you're not able to succeed in this educational model. Whereas as we go forward with the Benilde program, you'll see the Benilde program is saying, that's not the whole story. Part of it is the way our schools are structured and shaped are not designed to be welcoming and friendly for children who have predictable needs. And if we make our schools flexible and welcoming, they'll do well. So I prefer the term learning difference. Many of my students have a diagnosis of ADHD, chronic health problems, I've listed some here, family stress, for example, the death of a parent or sibling, and some students are English language learners. In the last webinar, I got the question about students who are on the spectrum, students with autism spectrum disorders. I've certainly had many students that fit that bill, and also students who have an anxiety disorder, a depressive disorder. So you can see the list is so long that really we're not looking at any specific condition as much as we're looking at students with at least average intelligence that want to attend a college preparatory high school and can meet the behavioral expectations of the school. I want to stress that right from the beginning, you want to be pristine about how you talk about these students. We know that when we label students, when we expect less of students, when we imply that students are not capable, unconsciously, teachers absorb this information and telegraph that to the students. Study after study has shown that. So the Benilde program is carefully designed to not label the students and not set up any expectation other than, of course you will succeed because you are a bright and capable person who's willing to try your best. Here are the 7 principles that we'll be looking at tonight. I'm sure you can read them for yourself. At the end of the presentation, I will have information about how you can get more information about any one of these 7 items. All right, we'll begin with inclusion. The older I get, the more firmly I become committed that the only way to go is to have students in the regular classroom with their peers. The Bonneau program is a fully inclusive model. Students are taking the same English class, the same math class, the same social studies class. Everything is absolutely the same. They can enroll in any course for which they are academically eligible. Many Bonneau students have taken honors and AP courses in the past. They must meet the same graduation requirements, and thus their transcripts will be identical to their peers, and the grades that they achieve will be identical. So in other words, a Bonneau student that gets an A in an English class has learned the same amount of material, has performed the same tasks, has participated at the same level as any other student in that class who's gotten an A. This is extremely important so that their transcript looks identical to any other student's transcript, thus giving them access to any college that they may in fact like to attend. The original Bonneau program has been, as I said, in place for 16 years. There have been no complaints from colleges. They're completely happy with the way the transcript represents our students. And we've had many students from St. John's who have gone on to attend highly selective colleges and universities. It's also important to know that Bonneau students may participate in any activities, clubs, and programs, volunteer work, student government, anything that happens at the school can be open to a Bonneau student. While many applicants to the Bonneau program have very low grades in middle school, and we'll talk about that in a minute, some do not. Some have very good grades. But the story that you'll hear from them or their parents is that they're starting to creep into 2.5, 3 hours of homework a night, which is onerous for an 8th grader. And the students will start to say, I really don't think I can handle playing soccer anymore. I won't have time to practice my violin because I can't do that and do all my homework. So the Bonneau program is also designed for that type of student as well. I'll talk a little bit more about later on about how the students feel about being in the program. Moving on to universal design for learning. Universal design is a principle that was developed by architects when the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed. Architects cleverly realized that in order to comply with the law, they would need to design structures from the ground up to provide access to the maximum range of human beings. And they came up with some clever, simple principles to use in their planning. Educators heard about this and said, that's genius. We need universal design for learning principles. These were developed, and they're available to you. I see Kate has it there at cast.org. CAST is an enormous site. You could get lost in there for days. There's so much information about student learning, about technology, about flexibility. It's just fabulous. UDL is just one piece of what they're doing. But I just did a screenshot of the learning guidelines. You'll see them on your screen. 9 simple statements, and each statement has 3 go-tos, but they are brilliant. And the purpose, when you're starting a new program, building a new school, anything that you're doing from scratch, you read through these and say, what could we do to give maximum access to all learners in regard to these principles? So when we were building the Bonneau program at St. John's, we took a look at the UDL principals and we started to think through what could we do differently? What's available to us in the school day that might positively change learning outcomes for high-risk kids? Let me give you a couple examples. I've already covered that. Moving on. Okay. So in this screenshot, just a little bit clearer, you'll see number 5, for example, suggests that we want to provide options for expression and communication. How can we think broadly about the ways our students will express themselves and communicate effectively in the learning process? And we head down to number 3, and it says build fluencies with graduated levels of support for practice and performance. That sounds good. We know that high-risk learners often have trouble expressing themselves effectively in the classroom verbally in terms of answering questions, or effectively asking clarifying questions, or effectively using the text as a resource, or writing effectively to explain their ideas. So we know that providing graduated support in regard to this particular skill would be a great idea. How are we actually going to do that? Well, when you go to this site and you click on there, it will have idea after idea after idea. Some lesson plans, some structural things, and depending on the size of your school, the type of students, and the needs they might have, you're going to find something that you haven't considered before. On a micro level, this is just a small example, when you go on the site there, it's going to take you to a site called VisuWords, VISUWORDS. This is a free service. Maybe some of you have already found it, but if you haven't, it's a free service where you can look up a definition of a word, and it will automatically build a graphic organizer for you, showing the part of speech, the meaning of the word, and connecting it to other words the student may know. So for your visual learners, it's a fabulous way to quickly get information about what a word means, an interesting way to build a word bank. So that's on an individual student level, how UDL principals work. On a macro level, when we took a look at the principles and we wanted to think about physical action, provide options for physical action, we see up here number 4. And number 8, options for sustaining effort and persistence. We realized that one of the problems with high-risk learners is that they often get overwhelmed. They could do well if they perhaps only had 1 or 2 classes, but with the course load that they're required to carry in high school, they can't keep all the balls in the air. So we came up with the idea that students would be allowed to take a course in the summer. This would be a regular class. This is not a makeup class. This is not a class for students who have failed. This is a regular course. They're just doing it in the summer instead of doing it in the school year. Usually it was a social studies class. Occasionally it was a religion course. Sometimes there were other options. When I was at St. John's, it was actually physically taught at the school. Here at St. Ray's now, we're trying distance learning. But the point is the student has completed 1 course before school even starts. When I left St. John's, I did a survey of my students and I asked their opinions. What should we keep? What should we change? What did you like about Benilde? What did you not like about Benilde? The number 1 popular item was please keep the kids having a class in the summer. They absolutely loved it. They experienced what we know about divergent learners, which is that they often transition, have difficulty with transitions. So when they were only taking 1 class, they did much better, and they realized that they like to get deeply into one subject. And that was true about them, and that what we had been telling them about how they had great brains, just not typical brains, made some sense. It also meant that now they had a free period every day. They had less homework every day. And that free period led to a time for them to meet with me as the learning specialist in a class that would meet every day. It would not be for tutoring. It would be for instruction. And we'll talk about the content of that class later. But here you see the link for the Universal Design for Learning Principles. They're very powerful. And if you read through them, you will get ideas at your school as well. So thinking about universal design, I just mentioned the flexibility that students could take a course in the summer, but we came up with many other flexible ideas as well. Here are some examples. Priority scheduling to maximize energy levels. Students were able to request, I'd like priority scheduling. What does that mean? I'm going to describe to you, I'm the student, I'm going to describe to you what I need. So our first student needs a high level of activity in their day. We would build them a schedule where perhaps the first class they had would be English, followed by homeroom. Our homeroom was later in the morning at St. John's. It wasn't the first of the day. And this grew out of the BNO program, by the way. So I've got English, now I've got homeroom. Okay, there's my little bit of relaxing, little bit of fidgeting time. Then I'm going to have math, great. And then after math, I'm going to have PE, wonderful. Now I'm going to go to my science class. Oh, after science, I'm going to have lunch. So you see, you're building a schedule that allows the student to get up, move around. Sometimes we would put the class at the farthest end of the school, so the student had to physically walk. It really helped. We also would look at students who were taking medication. Was there a time of the day that their medication was most effective? If so, wouldn't it be ideal if they took the class that required them to be at their best during that time? So we were able to do a great deal with the schedule, and eventually we developed a rather unique scheduling system to accomplish this. That, in turn, had other benefits. We had part of the schedule rotate. We had part of the schedule remain the same every day. What this led to was we were able to hire some part-time faculty, which high schools that have a rotating schedule find hiring part-time faculty to be impossible. So once we built this flexibility in, it not only helped the BNU students, but it began to have other benefits for the school. We allowed courses out of sequence. So, for example, a student with a language-based learning disability who has never studied a foreign language before is going to find the first year of foreign language study to be difficult. Doesn't it make sense to bring them into high school, allow them to start in the BNL program, learn about learning, get settled into high school, and prepare effectively for a course they know will be difficult? They can still take 3 years of a language, which will be quite sufficient for almost all college programs. Students responded to all of this flexibility in a really interesting way. They began to step up and take responsibility for their learning in ways that they never had before. We talk about self-advocacy. We want students to advocate for themselves, but sometimes we don't acknowledge how very difficult that is. The teacher-student relationship is not an equal relationship. They're young, they're not perhaps articulate, they don't necessarily understand why they need certain things, they just know that they need them. This adds up to likely a poor outcome, but when the students saw that if they could articulate to us why they needed a certain schedule, we would be happy to give them the schedule. We respected that they had put the time into learning about themselves and their needs. When the students saw that if they could make a case for taking courses out of sequence, that we would be happy to honor that, again, they began to say, hey, maybe there's something to this. Maybe I am a bright person. And now it's time to hit them with the self-knowledge. You really can't advocate for yourself if you don't understand what you need. And so the Benil class began to take on the, it was to learn about learning. It wasn't about tutoring. Well, I'm not going to reteach what you learned in your math class today. I'm not going to show you how to diagram a sentence. I mean, not that I would refuse to do that. Of course, there is some of that that goes on in the Bino class, but very, very little. What does go on in the Bino class is how to learn in a large group, what you might find distracting, how to ask a clarifying question, how to take efficient notes, anything. What is my learning profile? Why has someone told me that I have a condition called ADHD? What does that mean? How does it impact me in various environments? This self-knowledge and self-advocacy begins at the moment of application. From the moment that you meet the student, you want to speak to them in a way that if you want to be here with us at this school, we're asking you to take the time to learn about yourself as a learner. You've had a difficult time in school. Maybe you've had poor grades. Maybe you haven't enjoyed school. Maybe you've had people nagging at you that you're a bright person who doesn't do their best. Maybe you've been sick for a long time and really have gaps in your learning. Whatever the story is, we sit down with the student and we explain that to them clearly and gently. A parent is present, but the parent doesn't speak. They just listen and hopefully affirm what is said to the student. And hopefully right at the beginning you get that student buy-in. Gee, that sounds exciting. I like the idea that somebody is explaining to me and believes that I'm smart and believes I can do this. And now I have a little different theory about why I perhaps have never enjoyed school. I like to use the principles available in the handbook here, Tuning a School Handbook, from the All Kinds of Minds Institute. These are ideas for what they might refer to as neurologically atypical students. We might call them divergent learners. There might be many different ways of describing them. I call them bright kids with learning differences. We have to remember that students who struggle or underperform, they've been hurt. They don't always like school. They don't necessarily trust their teachers. So right from the beginning, honesty, clarity, gentleness, and emphasizing that the student is expected to do the learning. We don't want to reinforce learned helplessness. I personally feel that tutoring is way, way overrated and really overused. It's expensive. It's time-consuming for the student, and it doesn't teach the student how to learn in a large group. And that's really the skill that they're missing. So the Benil class tries to do that. You'll see some of the things I've already touched on them. I haven't mentioned the advanced study skills. We do very specific ways to memorize vocabulary. We talk about very specific note-taking skills, how to read a textbook, how to ask a clarifying question. We look at strategies for maintaining your attention in class, everything from taking a small sip of water to getting a good night's sleep, to doodling with permission. Some students actually pay attention better when they can do that. We cover the laws that impact persons with disabilities, so students will be empowered when they are adults if they need to access those laws. We certainly look at technology, anything that will boost learning in a large group setting. And then on to technology. I put this farther down in the presentation only because I find that in many cases people jump to technology too soon, and then they don't get the outcome that they want. At the risk of repeating myself ad nauseum, I hope you're starting to see that the philosophy of the Benil program is to empower students to give them the tools so that they can learn. That really begins with their own attitude, their own confidence in themselves, their own desire to learn, their relationship with the teacher. It's on a human level, human to human, and with peer support as well. Peer relationships in the Bonneau program are very important. So introducing technology too soon can undercut that relationship. I'll give you an example. I have a student now who has a very typical behavior in that she has difficulty maintaining the materials that she needs for school in the proper order and method that they need to be used. She might do her homework, it might get left at home. She knows she needs her notebook, she forgets it in her locker. You know who I'm talking about. So this was predictable. I knew the student had this problem when she came. But I did not say, okay, well, we'll just accommodate you and here's how we'll get around this problem. No. We talked about the fact that she had this problem. We talked about why I thought she had it. I asked her to think about, why do you think you have it? And she just came to school. And naturally, in the first week or two of school, predictable things began to happen and get lost. And we talked about how frustrating that was and what she might like to do about it. And she already owned an iPad. And so I suggested, would you like to keep everything on your iPad? And she said she would. So the next step was for her to research apps. Not me, her. And I gave her some suggestions, and she picked two, NoteMocha and Notability. Notability is about $2.99, NoteMocha is free. So she compared the two. She decided she liked Notability. Great. Would her mother be willing to buy it for her? Yes, she would. Okay. So she got it on her iPad. Now she needs to become a Notability expert. Not Mrs. Engel, the student. And she's using time in the Bonneau class to learn how to use this app, and she used another peer as a resource. And when she really felt, now I have all the skills I need to keep all my notebooks, she had to make an appointment with one of her teachers to ask her teacher, can I keep my notebook this way in your class? And she invited me to go with her. We rehearsed beforehand what she was going to say. Naturally, behind the scenes, I went to the teacher and said, I hope you can see your way to say yes to this. And if you have any concerns that the notebook will not be the quality that you're looking for, please let me know now. And, you know, I'll allay your concerns before the student comes in. Finally, we had the appointment. Everything was wonderful. She was just beaming. She was just beaming that she had accomplished this on her own. And she's doing an excellent job of maintaining that notebook. And in a week or two, she's getting ready to go to her next teacher and ask permission to maintain her notebook in that class. By the end of the school year, all of her notebooks will be done electronically. Now, I could have said at the beginning of the school year, sweetie, you need to do your notebooks electronically. It's simple. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to use Notability. Do it like this. In my experience, teenagers don't like that approach very much. They don't feel empowered. They don't understand why you're telling them to do it. It feels like just one more thing that maybe a nagging adult is telling them to do. And it's true that I did not like the few low grades that she got at the beginning of the school year because she was losing things. But, you know, she didn't like them either. And I think it was necessary for her as a learner to see that this problem she had didn't magically go away just because she changed schools, just because she was highly motivated, just because she was older. It was a part of her. And once she got excited about using technology to work for her, oh man, it was great. It was just wonderful. I certainly understand that there's a cost to technology. I know that. And that's another reason that I put it at the end. I have one computer in my classroom. I certainly want my students to have access to technology, but it isn't essential. If she didn't own that iPad, I would have other ideas for solving her notebook problem for her. And now we come to accommodations. And many of you are wondering why I didn't bring this up sooner. In my opinion, accommodations are overused. When that happens, you run several risks. First of all, a student that has multiple accommodations, it can be very challenging to keep track of that when a student has multiple teachers. And then you'll hear back, so-and-so didn't get their accommodation in this class, then get the accommodation in that class, and you can be constantly running around putting your finger in the dike to make sure accommodations happen, which again isn't a good use of time. Secondly, when a student has too many accommodations, they can be accommodated right out of the learning environment. I don't want to sound like I'm negative about accommodations. They are absolutely essential and need to be allowed. But the elegant way to do it is to do everything that I listed first. And what I've learned is that when you get to that point, students do not need as many accommodations. The ones that they are left, those are the ones they actually need. Those are the ones that may make sense to them. Those are the ones they will use. Those are the ones that will make sense to the faculty. A few years ago, I had a high school student that was dealing with depression and having trouble getting out of bed in the morning. This is not an uncommon problem among high school students. The school that the student was attending allowed the student to come to school late every day and didn't initiate their regular late policy. The result is the student was late 76 times, but they were still accountable for all those classes that they missed. Well, they couldn't possibly pass. So that wasn't an accommodation. That was an enablement. Is that a noun? That it wasn't effective. It was something I think they did. They meant well, but they didn't know what to do, and so they called it an accommodation, which it was not. That student switched schools and went to another school where they had an opportunity to learn about how depression was impacting them, where they had a chance for some of the scheduling options that I've already talked about, where the learning specialist was working in conjunction with the child's doctor to be sure that any medication that they were taking was effective. They learned about sleep hygiene and what they could do to get themselves on a good sleep schedule and try to maintain it. And they were absolutely held accountable for being on time to school every day. And they were able to do it. Here we have some very simple accommodations, but they're just for purposes of illustration. True accommodations do not change how much the student learns or what they learn. If you feel you're changing how much or what they actually learn, it's not an accommodation. Here we have students sitting in the front of the class. I've had teachers joke that every seat has to be in the front of the class because they get the request for this accommodation so many times. Actually, some students with attention problems and many students with central auditory processing difficulties need to be at least in the middle because they need to be able to see what other students are doing so that they can copy them. So if they see everybody reach in their desk and take out a book or see everybody going for their red binder, they get a visual cue as well as an auditory cue. So sitting in front of the class is not always ideal. But if it is, eventually you just change to this kind of a setting. And as you can see, in this setting, sitting in front of the class is meaningless. While this is a very simple example, it really illustrates the point that accommodations are specific to the school that the child attends. So you can't take a child's 504 plan from their public school or their IEP or any plan from any other school, even another Catholic school, and just put it in place. That's impossible. Somebody has to know your learning environment, your school, your class size, your schedule, your teaching methods, your curriculum, everything about your school, and then take a look at what accommodations might be necessary. The child might need some new ones, they might not. There's plenty of research about accommodations and how they do not impact the amount the students learn in the classroom. We need to move beyond concerns that high school teachers may have about accommodations. I hope that the long history of the BNU program and the excellent college admission standards will allay any fears that people have that offering very basic accommodations will impact a student's abilities or their opportunities to get into college. So I would suggest focusing on 2 or 3. Be prepared to explain to your faculty how they will not negatively impact the student. Make sure they're specific to your school. And this leads us into the 7th principle, faculty training. And people will often ask, aren't the faculty going to need a lot of training in order to teach these exceptional learners? The answer is yes and no. First of all, it's typical to just bring in freshmen. So you'll only be talking about your freshman teachers. At our school, here at St. Ray's, there already was a tradition of the freshman teachers meeting regularly. So it wasn't the entire faculty. It was teachers who are experienced with dealing with younger, more immature students, teachers who had had students fail out in the past, probably because they had unidentified learning needs in many cases. So they were highly motivated to get to know me and see if maybe this approach might be somewhat different. Remember that your faculty is already struggling on their own with students who fit this profile. And when you're able to show them that you have something fresh and new to offer them so that their curriculum will not change, but their students will succeed, they will follow you, particularly when you reassure them that there will be no changes in the grading, no changes in the testing of the students, no changes in their feeling that an A is an A B is a B. Successful faculty training is a way to acknowledge what your teachers already know. Keep reminding them of past students. I know many schools that have gone back and taken a list of students that failed out the year before or chose to leave and look at the common factors that those students had in common and design their BNO program around those factors to begin with. The faculty was really excited about it because we love our kids. When they come to us as freshmen, we want them to graduate. Your learning specialist is your faculty training. Job-embedded faculty training is the best. Bringing in speakers from the outside, it's nice. It's nice to go out to conferences. I'm doing a webinar. Obviously, I believe in that. But ideally, your faculty want to run in and ask a fast question. Why is it that I can teach slope this way and Mary understands it just fine, but when I teach it this way, she completely doesn't get it? Why is that? Oh, I know that. I can tell you that. Or if I don't know why, I'll say, well, that's a really interesting question. Tell me more about slope. Tell me more about how you were teaching it. Let me think about what I know about Mary as a learner. Let's see if we can tease out why she ran into that problem. And then, some math teachers are going to say, I just teach 2 or 3 methods for slope, so the kids always have a go-to, but I don't care which method the student uses as long as they understand the concept of slope. So it's fine with me. if she only uses the one method that works for her. I'm getting ready to start to take questions, so if you have any questions that you want to ask, you can start answering them now. I hope you can see, I hope I've made my case that the Bonneau program is really different from tutoring models or other pull-out programs that have been used in the past, and really has a high focus on student responsibility, student self-knowledge, and flexibility within the school setting. I see those as being the key features and the reason why the program has been so successful. The students that I have right now, I don't want to share too much about them because they are a small group, and that would be inappropriate, but I can say that they all chose to be a part of this program. They were offered the opportunity to come. You can just come to St. Ray's if you want to, or you can come and be a part of this program. They all chose to be part of the program, which I think says a lot about them as kids. And they're doing extremely well. Almost everybody who's enrolled will be making the honor roll this week when our first report cards come out, and others are close to that. These are students that were very, very far from making the honor roll in the past, and that's not an outcome that's expected when students transition to high school. All right, I'm going to start reading questions. You don't feel that students should have any tutoring. I always felt it would help them learn the material that they need extra help with. Well, I think I might be pretty extreme in my feelings. It's not that I don't think tutoring ever has a place, but I find that in many tutoring relationships, the students are not really actually mastering the material the way the tutor thinks that they are. There's conflict of interest sometimes. Tutors are being paid. If they work out of the relationship with the child, they're no longer being paid. That's problematic. Naturally, there's a fondness for the student when you're working one-on-one like that, and it takes a sophisticated tutor to wait, to let the child make mistakes, to let the child learn from their own mistakes. The feeling that one wants to constantly correct and that the goal is simply to turn in well-done homework. I think there's a lot of parroting that goes on in many tutoring relationships. And the bottom line is students need to learn in a large group setting. Otherwise, they will be held prisoner to tutoring for the rest of their academic career. I always ask the question, when is the tutoring going to end? Now, if a child was sick for a few months, needs to get caught up, that's completely different. Completely different. If a child comes in from a different school system and you realize there's a gap and they weren't taught some material, that's a great use of tutoring. But it should be brief, it should be short, it should be targeted. Many students with special needs are being tutored 2, 3, 4 afternoons a week for years, and they develop a learned helplessness. I've had kids say to me, I don't need to pay attention, Mrs. I'm going to just do it with my tutor later on. There's no incentive to pay attention in class. They don't feel empowered to learn in the classroom. They only know how to learn with an adult, present one-on-one. And it often sends them the hidden message. I've had kids say this to me, well, you know, I really can't learn it unless somebody breaks it down for me, and I can't learn it unless it's one-on-one. I'm not that bright. So then when they get on to college, what's that going to mean? What's it going to mean when they're a professional and they have to go into a large group learning setting? Those are the questions that I ask when I look at tutoring. What kind of accommodations for students with auditory processing issues who therefore have difficulty taking notes from oral lecture? Okay, there's a lot of ways to go with that. I would want to get a baseline, first of all. You have to work backwards. You know, in this day and age, there is not as much of a need to take notes from an oral lecture as there was. You can't see me, but well, I guess you did see a picture of me. I'm 56, as there was when I was in high school. For example, lectures could be, you could use your iPad. You've seen the television commercials, and everything the professor says can just go onto the iPad. And then the skill that you need is how to sort that so that you can use it to study from. Or the skill that you need is how to learn in the lecture. I would be less concerned about the taking of the notes part and more concerned that a student with auditory processing issues, if somebody was just talking and talking and talking and talking, that they would not be able to take in all the information. I would be asking why a teacher was just using an oral lecture method in this day and age. I would be challenging the teacher a little bit. What are you doing to have some sort of a visual presentation for the students? I certainly could teach a Cornell note method, which is a great method. If you're not familiar with it, it's a great method where students only have to get some of the notes down on paper, and you can tell them in a targeted way what they put on the left-hand side of the paper, the big ideas, and then show them how to fill in the small ideas later. That's a wonderful way to help support kids that don't know how to listen through a lecture. But I wouldn't quickly go to an accommodation for them. I would first look at what is the learning goal here. My learning goal for all students would be that they would be able to be successful in the learning environment and have notes as one tool. Let me see. Any other questions? Well, I don't see any other questions popping up on the screen. We've got about a little under 3 minutes. I will say, let me see, we have a few students who are very low functioning, third grade level. How do you determine what level learner is optimal for this program? Okay, well, I have students here at St. Ray's right now who in some areas, not across the board, but in some academic areas might be performing close to that level. It's really the thinking level. It's the thinking level. It's the concept level that is what's important. Can they think about the content of high school? Because there's ways to support them in their reading. There's dictation software. There's all kind of ways you can listen to the textbooks. There's ways to build their vocabulary. Math is a little bit more challenging. You'd really probably looking for a curriculum that already had algebra across 2 years or allowed a 9th grade pre-algebra approach. Let me see. There's a question about college acceptance that I think you'll cover in the next slide. Not sure what the question about college acceptance is. Oh, here we go. Benilde students have been accepted and graduated from a wide variety, many that are considered rigorous. St. John's was admitting about 20 to 25 students a year into the Benilde program, and so you do the math. With 16 years gone by, that's a large number of students. And then when I was Director of Special Education for the Archdiocese, I had an opportunity, as I said, cousins of the Benilde program. There was no concern about college admission. In fact, it was outstanding. They were prepared to learn in that environment. 45 seconds, I think, so I'll thank you all. Please email me if you have any other questions. My email is my last name, E-N-G-E-L, Engel, Works, W-O-R-K-S, @mail, M-A-I-L.com.